Hello and welcome to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we discuss films we think might be underrated, underappreciated, or we just wanted to talk about them, really. I'm Josh Hallam, and I'm joined as ever by the lovely Alice Oliver. Alice, how you doing?
Oh, I'm very well, thank you, Josh. How about yourself?
Oh, you know me. All right.
Shit. Terrified,
yeah. No,
depressed,
I'm not going to be honest. I'm not going to be honest, am I? Yeah, let's get into it. No. I'm very well, thank you. Very excited as ever because we're joined by another couple of fantastic guests. Actually, it's a first for us. We've never had a brother and sister on before, but we have today. We're joined by Laura and Ron from Lexx Education. How are you guys doing?
Yay, we're good. Do you find it vaguely creepy that we're brother and sister? Like, I'm starting to feel now like one of those weird brother-sister dance duos.
I mean, it depends what you get up to, but I don't think it's
I didn't
too
like
creepy.
the pause after the word couple, to be honest. Like, they're from Somerset, but it's not like that.
I'm from a small village myself, so I don't know. My sister could be my cousin. It could be the same person. So, yes, how are you guys? You both well?
Yeah, good. Busy. Yeah. You know those like weeks where you kind of go, God, have I done anything fun? So I've been quite looking forward to this so that I can actually go, oh, for just an hour, I'm just going to chat nonsense.
Similar. Very busy at the moment, and I had one weekend off at home and then used it to get so leglessly drunk that I just wasn't relaxed at all after the end of it.
You weren't relaxed after getting drunk?
Nobody's relaxed after being drunk. You're filled with paranoia about like, what if I accidentally phoned everybody I like and said awful things to them? You wouldn't have done that. You would never do that. But you just, oh God. It's that sneak texting you have to do to everybody you know to check that they don't hate you in the 3 days afterwards. You're like, I haven't heard from so-and-so. You think you'd never normally hear from so-and-so, you idiot. It's got nothing to do with the gin and tonic.
Yeah. Or you worry about stuff that's already happened. Oh, what did I say to that girl at the Levers do in 2006? Like
fair, man.
All that sort of stuff. Anyway, so we always start with a random question to get warmed up after the initial warm-up, which we just did then. So this is a question from Jeanette Miller on Instagram. I'll come to you first, Ron. If a song played every time you entered the room, what would it be and why?
Oh,
so
goodness.
if you were like a wrestler, I suppose, the way they
music, yeah.
I think I'd go for The Sound of Silence.
Not the Simon and Garfunkel song, just literal silence.
Yeah.
I'd ask for Ron to have A Whole New World from Aladdin.
Oh, yeah. That'd be great. Yeah. Can we start the meeting? Ron's on his way. Unbelievable. Yeah.
And Ron just comes floating in like the princess that he is.
But in it, he's in the white prince outfit. Sorry, I'm late, guys. Traffic. Sits down.
This is a story that Laura loves to tell, and as she knows, I sang both parts, so I'd have to have white prince outfit on one side and then Jasmine floaty trousers on the other side.
Ron at school had to sing it for a music class, and then the day that they all had to sing it, no one else in his group turned up except one other person who was solemnly playing it on piano while Ron sang both parts alone to the rest of the class.
That's
Can
baller
you
that you still
picture
did
anything
that, though.
funnier
You still
coming
did
out
it,
of a
though,
12-year-old
man.
boy?
But you still
That takes guts.
Did you still do it, though?
Yeah, stood up there, belted it out.
Fair play.
Yeah, respect.
Like,
Yeah.
I went to school in Chorley. I'd have got beaten up for that. So fair enough. What about you, Laura? If a song played?
Every time I walked into a room, it'd be fun to have that like dun, 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 dun. That's what you want,
Is that the
isn't
Imperial
The
March?
Imperial March of Star Wars.
It'd make everyone pay attention to you when you went into a meeting.
It definitely would.
The thing is, as a comedian, though, you're always walking on stage to music. So would they have to just put that every time you came on, or would you play like Kaiser Chiefs and that together, so it'd just be a mess of noise as you walked on stage? Do you know what I mean? It'd be...
No, I think I'd ask for it to just be my music, and then it would really like juxtapose against my naturally chirpy on stage persona. Hello. Do, do, do.
What about you, Alice?
Well, I didn't think about this for very long because obviously there's a lot of songs and I like a lot of the songs. So I feel like if I thought about it too long, I would have just got myself into like a spiral of thinking, no, this one, no, this one. But I think it's got to be Supermassive Black Hole by Muse, right? I mean, what an intro. Like, people are paying attention to that. It's like, it's sexy, it's dangerous, it's iconic. I just think I'd feel boss every fucking where I went if that was just playing. Every time I walked in the room, gotta be that one. What about you, Josh?
I'd have thought you'd have picked night swimming. Because I've actually seen you walk into a room to that.
Yeah, sure, but it's a bit like no one's going to sit up and pay attention.
And
that's
you were getting married on the day, so probably,
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
anyway.
that was just very, very circumstantial. That one.
What would I pick? Probably Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds, just because it's iconic, innit? Do you know what I mean? It's the same.
Don't you want that as you leave, though?
Yeah, that's got to be when you leave.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, good point.
You can't just walk into rooms with your fist in the air.
I just look like I'm catatonic at all times. I don't know.
I think you might end up being a cult leader within like seconds.
But like Wayne Forrest Gump, people just follow him. People just be following me every time this guy leaves the room. Anyway, we will move on to talking about this week's film, which is Step Brothers from 2008. So spoiler warning if you've not seen Step Brothers. If you haven't, I don't know why you're listening to this because you won't know what we're talking about. So you guys have chosen this. Have you chosen this between you, or did one of you pick it, or how did you come to this film?
I think the common ground between us when on the film's front is so sparse that it had to be a Will Ferrell film. And then I think you said the brief was underrated films. So if we were we talked about like Anchorman and stuff, but undeniably not underrated. So we went for Step Brothers.
Also, I don't think I've ever seen an underrated film because enough people would have had to have been talking about it for me to be aware of it and to watch it. So I'm not like you guys must like sneak in and find cool things. They're like, oh, I'll give this weird film a chance. Whereas I don't think I've ever done that. So
yeah, I know what you mean. It's very much based on. I suppose it's very much based on taste and how much you know about films. And if you don't watch that many films, then you're not going to come across more. Whereas I don't know about you, Alice, but I would like watch a film, and if I like an actor, I'd see what else they've been in, and follow lines of thought that way. So yeah, that's a good point. So you came to it together. So in that case, who wants to tell us what it's about, and who wants to tell us why you picked it?
Don't make us pick now. We'll have to volunteer one of you.
I'll hazard that it's about stepbrothers.
Yeah, that's good.
The twist is that they're older than you might have thought.
Yeah, it's about two grown men that end up becoming stepbrothers because their parents meet at a conference and have a weirdly sexual relationship that leads to marriage. And then they don't get on, and then they do get on, and they help each other overcome their individual behavioral difficulties.
I don't think anyone's ever had to think about the plot of Step Brothers. I think even when they were writing it, they were just like, this is just what it is. It's just those two actors doing that. So you picked it because it's underrated then? You think it's pretty underrated?
I've never heard anyone else talk about it per se since I was like a teenager. Yeah. I don't think it's
definitely not up there with Anchorman and like other Will Ferrell vehicles, is it?
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily entered like the memosphere in the same way that a lot of Will Ferrell films have.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Anyway, we'll come to that when we get to the critical reception. Alice, had you seen this one?
I had seen this one, and my memory of it was very, very positive. I do remember thinking it was very funny when I saw it, and really enjoying it, but I haven't seen it for a few years, so I was equally excited to go back and revisit it, and also nervous to see how it had aged, and did I just think this was funny when I was a bit younger, sort of thing. What about you, Josh? I reckon you probably had seen this one?
I'd seen it loads, to be honest. It's one of those films where I can put it on in the background and still find stuff to laugh at, but also not have to concentrate that much, except if you're making notes for a podcast, which I had to do in this point. So we've all seen it. Let's get stuck into what we liked about it. So Alice, after you, what did you like about it, having watched it again?
Go on then. So in general, I do think it's pretty funny, but with some hilarious moments. So the script, the performance, and the delivery are all great from everyone. But the highlight for me is Adam Scott, right? So I haven't seen him in much, but what I have seen him in, I love him. His character is this extreme, like so hateable compared to Brennan and Dale. And he's just a delight to watch, right? So he plays Derek, who's Brennan's brother. That's Will Ferrell's character. And he's really financially successful with a wife, 2 kids, and this high-powered job and nice expensive things. But he acts...
Got abs.
Those abs. I love that. I love how badly that shot is put together as well. That makes it so much funnier. But he acts like a child as well, right? Because he acts like this arrogant teenager, like this school bully. So he is just as childish as Brennan and Dale's characters, but just in a different way. He was such a highlight for me. I think as well, I think it can be quite challenging for grown adults to act like teenagers without it just looking and sounding ridiculous and annoying and just feeling really disengaging. But I think Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly do such a great job of this, and I really enjoyed watching them. It also is funnier that they're playing a 39 and a 40-year-old, but they look even older than that. Like, there's just something about those 2 dudes where they just look so much older than their years. So they look like 2 grumpy old men. So then casting them in these roles is funny in itself. And then also leading off from that, got to do a quick shout out for Alison Jones, who is the casting director in this, whose name pops up a lot for so many of the best comedies. So I started noticing her name knocking around a few years ago because my mum is also called Alison Jones. And then I realised that she's on the credits for some of the best comedies out there, including Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping, which is obviously one of my favourite films ever. But that's the sort of my general feelings about it. Josh, what about you? What do you like about this film?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is it's just really funny. Right, I do think it's very funny. Some of the bits, we'll get into in terms of how it's aged and stuff. Like you say, it all comes down to Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly's performances. And like you said, they've done stuff to... The performances are great, but they've also done stuff to make it even funnier, like dress them the same, dress them in clothes that are too tight, dress them like teenagers, even though they're grown men and stuff like that. They've got the same hair, they've got the same gait, they've got the same way of speaking and stuff like that. So their performances are funny because, like you say, they are literally teenagers who haven't aged. But then what you do is, to make it funnier, you surround them with normal people. So it makes it look even weirder, so that whenever they interact with a normal character, they're just like, what the fuck is going on? Like the bit where they're having the job interviews and stuff like that. It's like they just absolutely do not know what's going on. It reminded me, a lot of good comedies do that, where they create a little bubble around the characters, and the comedy comes from when they meet people outside the bubble who are going. It's like we always talk about with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They do that, where the gang in it act like horrendous, but to them it makes sense. But the reason it's funny is because when they meet people outside, they're like, what is this? Do you know what I mean? And that's sort of where the comedy comes from. So the main 2 people who support that are the parents, who are both very, very funny in this. And then, like you say, bigger supporting performances from like Catherine Hahn and Adam Scott, who themselves they're not playing normal people. So you have that really balanced feel of normal people and melodramatic performances, which I think is really funny. And ultimately, it is just daft humor, isn't it? It's almost like a series of sketches of what if these characters were put in these situations, and that just creates set pieces which are funny, like the boats and hose scene and the interview scene and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, overall, I do think it's really, really funny. But let's see what the guys think. So Ron, what do you think about it, and what do you particularly like about Step Brothers?
Yeah, I think it's just like you say, it's really stupid humor. I love the way that the film escalates from a normal amount of stupid humor and what could be construed as quite a well-constructed movie, where you have the setup of the mum and the dad, and then they hate each other, and then they love each other, and then they break up for a bit, and then there's just this batshit scene at the end at the fucking Catalina wine mixer, where they just bring it all back in. Yeah, I mean, I think that scene really kind of encompasses what I love about this film, because it has stuff. And what I love in comedy sometimes is when they have the courage to not explain stuff. And like the whole lumberjack thing, this bully that makes him eat a belly full of white dog shit. And these characters don't come back. There's no backstory to them. It doesn't need that. But just the script writing and the performances are so funny that they just get away with it.
Yeah, it's not trying to be a highbrow intellectual comedy. It's just there to make you laugh at the stupidity of it all, the weirdness of it all. But and I think it does. I still think it's really, really funny. 14 years later, God, I still remember this coming out. What about you, Laura? What do you like about it? There is a Christmas scene in it, so
there is. I think there's my two favorite things about it are one, a bit like how Ron just did there, naturally talking about it. There are so many quotable lines from this film. It's Shark Week. Are there sofa cushions in the oven? Like it's so stupidly quotable. And this film came out just about the same time I went away. I did a 3-month job in Lapland working as an elf in a Santa's grotto in like really northern Finland. And this film had just come out. And me and my friend Rosie just fell in love with it together to the point that we built bunk beds in our cabin there so that we would have so much more room for activities. So there's things like that I just think like there's not a lot of meat on the bones of the jokes in this. Like, you know, sometimes these comedies made by people that find themselves and each other very, very funny can often run away with themselves if there's no editor. And I don't think this one's guilty of that in many places. And then the other thing is, like what you guys were saying, the set pieces. Like, is there a more inexplicable but brilliant set piece than Derek's family singing in the car?
Yeah.
Just
like that's
no
just
context,
a sketch.
no context whatsoever.
Yeah, it could have been dropped into so many films. You know, it's a drop-in moment. It's never referenced again. But it turns up and it's amazing. And I think like that sort of thing where you think like this is someone's passion project. It comes through, and I find it very funny
because it's the same team behind Anchorman. So it's Adam McKay, who's the director, and then Will Ferrell, obviously, and they've worked together on loads of stuff. And then Adam McKay's then done more satires. He did Don't Look Up and Vice with Christian Bale and all that sort of stuff. So to think he's gone from this to that, which is quite weird, but. Yeah. I think from what I know about them, that they do work quite hard on script and constructing it, but what was happening around this time in comedy and in American comedy films was that time where they went, here's the concept and the dialogue, we just shoot the actors until they give up, and then you end up with so things like, think of like the 40-Year-Old Virgin and all the films that came after that. It's just all knocked up. It's all like we shoot the actors because the actors are usually primarily either comedians or comic actors, and then they talk, and then we edit it and take the good bits out, and then you end up with like reels and reels of film, and some poor editor has to go through and cut it and get the best version of it. But I think to come back on something you said there, Laura, that's where you get the people who, like, sometimes, don't get me wrong, you get gold, but you also get the people who think, I'm just going to say whatever I want because I'm really funny and people want to see that. Whereas there is something to be said for a tightly scripted comedy. I mean, both work, but sometimes the disadvantage of the other one is you have to take the bad with the good, whereas in this is you can edit it and write it and redo it and all that sort of stuff. And there's definitely something to be said with that in this. Having said that, I do imagine there was probably a lot of ad-lib as well because of who's in it. So you never know. What else, Alice? What else did you like about it?
So I thought it was quite refreshing to get a very sexually charged scene between two older divorcees with Robert and Nancy. You know, we don't get that too often. No. It's always a couple of smoking hot 20-somethings who have those kind of scenes written for them. And sexuality and sex for older generations does get pretty ignored in Hollywood and in film and TV in general. So like I said near the beginning, that I think the film is generally quite funny, but with some standout moments. And I want to draw attention to some of those moments. So
go on.
One is when Brennan sings in front of Dale for the first time, right? He's trying to suss out if he's a good singer. And it's hilarious because his singing voice isn't that bad, like in terms of like the pitch and the tone and that, but it's the delivery that makes it so hilarious, like this like this almost sort of going into a whisper sort of thing because he's thinking about it so much and he's so in love with the fact that he's singing. That was hilarious. So the music video that Dale and Brennan make on the dad's boat is great and just absolutely smacks of the Lonely Island. So I just had a massive smile on my face for that whole scene, and it goes on a while. Like it feels like it is almost a full-length music video, so it's not just 5 or 10 seconds. So I appreciate the commitment that's gone into that bit. And finally, like Ron did touch on, the Catalina wine mixer, that whole sequence is hilarious. It is so well written and so well executed. You've got Brennan singing, and I had to look it up, but it's Por ti volare, right, which is a Spanish version of a popular Italian like operatic song sort of thing. So that in itself is really entertaining, but then you've got everyone having these really big emotional reactions to him singing, and we get these sort of like dreamlike memory sort of flashbacks / fantasy moments for some of the main cast. And the funniest is Derek's one, so Adam Scott, where he remembers the time that Brennan helped him fly a kite. And then he lets out this sort of half laugh, half squeal of delight, where I guess he sort of realizes that he does actually love his brother. He sort of goes like that when he has this. It just fucking floored me. I just could not stop laughing. But that whole sequence is just so well put together. And it's like the whole film is kind of like building you up to it. And it's just such a brilliant climax, I think, to the film.
It is. There's a relatability as well, because obviously the whole joke is that they're grown-ups, but they still act like teenagers. But also they bicker like brothers and sisters and sisters and all that sort of thing. So I think if you've got siblings, it is quite relatable. You know, that idea of like, did you touch my drum set? And all that.
Yeah,
like I think it's quite relatable. What about you guys as brother and sister? Was there any bits that you related to?
Well, because we're 10 years apart, by the time Ron was born, I was far too mature to fall for his bullshit. So we've never really been that argumentative. Also, Ron was born mentally aged 39. Ron became an archaeologist at the age of 2 and just like lived in our back garden excavating weird stuff.
I don't want to take... I think I'm getting a bit too harsh flack here from the woman who had a toy post office as a child.
Wow.
Actually,
who wanted
that.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Wanted nothing more than to just run an office.
Yeah, I really did. Once for my birthday, I was taken on a tour of Midland Bank before it became HSBC.
Oh, I remember.
I was taken round the back and given loads of stationery and to help me set up my bank at home.
Was it all right?
Yeah, I think I might be the only person in the world that wanted to be a bank manager when they were little and grew up to become a comedian rather than the other way around.
What changed, man? What happened to you?
We weren't that arguing. Can I take a minute to say how good is Catherine Hahn in this film?
Oh, brilliant.
Because this film was really way before the rest of the world discovered Catherine Hahn. Like she was just in everything, serving 1,000,000% brilliance in every role she had, and just slipping under the radar as character actresses often do. And then suddenly in the last year, she's had people suddenly noticing how great she is, and you half want to be like, actually, I've loved her since she was curling Dale up into a little ball and popping him in a vagina.
Because her commitment to the performance is always so clear as
when
well.
she
like
puts
in her body
leg up on that
language
urinal.
Yeah.
So there's a bit. So the version I watched, that I've got it on DVD. DVDs, kids, remember those? Wow. And I've got the unrated version. So I think it's got like an extra 15 minutes. So there's a bit in it, and I don't know. I've only ever seen this version, so I don't know if it's in the theatrical version. But there's a bit where they're having Christmas dinner, and her and Dale sneak off to have sex. Is that in the theatrical version? And then they fall through. They fall through from double doors, and he says he's fixing a tight muscle in her back.
I think I have seen that version, but no, I don't think it is in the theatrical one.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it, but
she really she owns that scene. Do you know what I mean? Like her comic chops are so on point in that scene. And like you say, Laura, she's been around for like, it must be like 20 years or so. And she's only now getting the props that she deserves because of like WandaVision and stuff.
WandaVision that did that.
Stuff like that. But like you say, she always rocks up. She always knows the assignment. She always like gives everything. She's always good. And she's great in this as well, because she isn't, said before, she isn't like a normal character. She is very melodramatic, and she's very like, she has some big acting to do, and she absolutely nails it in this.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about TV on this podcast, but her as Jen Barkley.
Just TV and that. Oh yeah, Jen Barkley.
Her as Jen Barkley in Parks and Rec is one of the best like characters in any sitcom I've ever seen.
She just turns up wearing the poncho because she doesn't want any of the children to touch.
Or the bit where is it like it's $1,500 an hour and she like just walks off after an hour because he's done talking to her. No, she's great. She's great. And there's loads of stuff she's been in. She's done serious stuff as well, like things like the Revolutionary Road, and there's loads of stuff she's done. But she's brilliant. She's brilliant. She's got Into the Spider-Verse as well. She does voice stuff in that. She's a female Doc Ock, but she's amazing in that. If you've
she's in Central Park on Apple TV. Which
is that good?
It's very, very good. Yeah. It's like a musical from the creators of Bob's Burgers and that kind of adult animation, but a full musical. It's got half the cast of Hamilton in it: Josh Gad, Catherine Hahn, Kristen Bell.
I have seen it advertised.
The music is beyond brilliant, and there's 3 numbers per episode. It's so good. It's one of those ones where you're like, it's such a shame it's on Apple because nobody's got Apple TV.
Got Apple. I don't have Apple. Can it be on Amazon Prime?
It's so worth getting the free trial to Apple. Just binge the morning show. Ted Lasso in Central Park in one go.
I got it for Ted Lasso, so yeah. And then I'll tell you what is good as well on Apple TV is speaking of the cast of this film is Severance. Have you seen that?
No.
It's really good.
That's Adam Scott, isn't it?
But it's got Adam Scott in it in the lead, and he plays a serious part. But it's one of the best shows I've seen in ages. He's really good in it. So yeah. Anyway, yeah.
It's all about the cones.
Anyway, back to the film. I'll tell you one thing as well. Another scene that we haven't mentioned. Let's talk about our favourite scenes. For me, the sleepwalking scene.
Yeah, classic.
It's all about the sleepwalking scene because I sleepwalk.
No, you don't.
I do, yeah. You? So I sleep talk because I've often woken up with an elbow in my ribs from my other half telling me to shut up.
You can't wake a sleepwalking person.
But I have definitely walked, but more when I was a kid and stuff. What about you, Alice? Do you have a favourite scene?
Me? Yeah. It's just the whole of the Catalina wine mixer. When he starts singing in the Catalina wine mixer, it's just it's beautiful, it's absurd, it's wacky, it's hilarious, and it just doesn't, like, there's such a risk of it going on too long and becoming sort of too tired and just like, oh, I'm bored of this joke now. But you never get there. Like, it just gets funnier and funnier and funnier. I think like we've talked about before, when films overdo the joke, sometimes it just really falls flat, and other times it makes it even fucking funnier. And I think in this, that's kind of what happened there with the Catalina wine mixer. But yeah, the whole thing just
what about you, Laura?
I think it's got to be the singing in the car. Bow, bow, I'm Derek, and I can sing high. It's so unnecessary and inexplicable, and those children are creepy, and Catherine Hahn's uncomfortableness. You're flat. You're so flat. The singing lessons. You're so flat.
But simultaneously, you know exactly what that family is like.
Yeah.
It gives away so much. Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it? Because it's like they're trying to give that idea of being the perfect family. They're like trying to be like Ned and Maud Flanders, but actually he's a bell end. Like he's a proper prick. But
it's so nice to see Adam Scott in that role. You know, he's so often playing your cute, sweet. Like, and like this was the first thing I saw him in, I think.
Same.
So then when he pops up as Ben Wyatt or somebody utterly lovable and everything else, you're like, wait a minute, that's Derek.
Yeah, no, I had the exact same thing. I couldn't get on board until I watched more Parks and Rec, that he was like this likable everyman type guy. I was like, you're a dick. Like you're the dickhead brother from Step Brothers. But yeah. What about you, Ron? Have you got a favourite scene?
I mean, I would have said their Catalina wine mixer as well, so I'll narrow in on a specific part of it. The bit with the dad, where the dad kind of turns and then he tells that story about pretending to be a dinosaur and chasing the local cats around. Because I think out of every quote in the movie, that's the one that me and my friends used to shout at each other, is just stop being a fucking dinosaur and get a job.
But also that scene gives you some insight into, well, maybe he isn't normal. Maybe he is quite weird, and that's why his son's quite weird. Do you know what I mean? Because he wanted to be a dinosaur.
I just love with this film that like the solution wasn't for them to just grow up. It was for just like them to kind of go halfway and like do get a life, but also keep all of this childish shit that they like. And I think that's kind of the moment in the film where that door kind of opens to they don't just have to cook and sell helicopters.
Yeah. It's about finding a middle ground, isn't it? Which is interesting because quite often comedies do have that trajectory of like, and then he realizes that blah 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 blah, and this isn't one of those. Like you say, I think one thing is interesting about this is everyone I've spoken to about it, because I would have been about 17 when this came out, so I was like prime cinema going age and target audience for this film, and everyone I know has a lot of affection for this film, but I don't think it's the sort of comedy you'll never see in any like top comedies. But then we've talked about this before, haven't we, Alice? Like a lot of the top comedies are always like quite highbrow and quite like intellectual comedies, whereas I think a lot of the cinema going or film watching audience want to see stuff like this that's just really stupid, really daft, and you can just shut off and enjoy the absolute ridiculousness of it. I mean, what do you think about that, Alice?
Yeah. I mean, because you can do ridiculous, stupid humor really well, and as long as you've got a good script and so much of it is to do with the delivery as well, which is just something that they nail in this. So we know them now, obviously, as big powerhouses of comedy, and they just kind of they all meld together so well in that film. And I think Will Ferrell, he's just, I mean, he could carry anything. I think, really.
Yeah.
Have you watched? I mean, you must have done, but the what's it called? Something like The Stories Behind the Movies or something on Netflix, where they cover Elf and how hard it was to get Will Ferrell approved as the leading man for Elf because no one knew him as the vehicle for a film yet. So that was fascinating then, watching it now and going, whoever was saying that must be like, I'm stinky at my job.
This guy, who's this nobody?
I haven't seen it, but I do know about that because I equally know about them then afterwards begging him to do another one. And him being like, I cannot do that again. Like that took so much energy. Like I feel like it'll kill me if I do another one.
Wow, yeah.
Because he's so. I mean, Elf's just up there, isn't it, as one of the best Christmas films, and it's aged like a fine wine.
Yeah,
that film. I absolutely love Elf.
My favorite Will Ferrell story is he talked Kristen Wiig into starring opposite him in a completely serious, like Hallmark movie. It's just a drama, and like it's not a comedy at all, but he just wanted to do it as a meta comedy bit because it's really funny watching Will Ferrell and Kristen Wiig play a very serious part in a very low budget movie.
I haven't even seen that.
What's this film called? I want to watch that.
I can't remember. I don't know what it was called. I just heard about it.
We'll Google it and we'll put it out when the episode comes out. Kristen Wiig's another one. Like what absolute powerhouse.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on then to talking about things that we perhaps didn't like about the film or that we would change about the film. I mean, is there much, Alice? Have you got much for this section?
So there's only one thing really, and I don't even know if you could class it as a dislike, but it's just something that I've noticed, especially when you compare it to other comedies. So it looks unremarkable. So like the costume, the sets, the props, the locations, everything is just really mediocre. Like if you think back to the other comedies we've done, especially things like Vacation or Pop Star, they're really visually impressive in a variety of different ways and are really engaging in that sense and a real treat for the eyes in the way that they use props, sets, costume, locations, etc. So I think that was definitely missing from this. But the caveat to that is obviously the focus here is on the script and on the performances. So it is like saying these guys can literally just be in like t-shirts, 3/4 lengths and some fucking sandals. And it's still going to be one of the funniest things you've ever seen. So there's it's kind of like I don't really give a shit, but it's just something that I noticed. And if I was going to comment on something, then that would be the thing.
Do you think that's on purpose though? Because the whole
I don't know. It feels a little bit like it feels indie. It feels kind of low budget, and it just feels like they're not going for the sparkle. They're not going for like the wow factor in terms of this isn't meant to be like a visual delight. It's literally just here's a great script performed really well by some really funny actors. Enjoy sort of thing. And if you can still enjoy it, even though it's lacking all those kind of visual stimuli, then they've nailed it, right? So. I'm kind of like, nah, I'm just sort of like looking for things here to keep a balanced argument. But when you think about something like Vacation, like so much effort has gone into the props in that film and into the location design. So when you sort of appreciate a film in that regard and you think about those sort of films that you haven't got that to appreciate in this film, but there are so many other things to appreciate. Doesn't put me off the film. Isn't something I disliked, but it is something that I noted. But that was it, really. This is pretty much a hit with me. What about you, Josh? Anything you didn't like or you would change?
Well, there's two things. One of them isn't really the film's fault, which is it's one of those films from about between 2000 and 2010 that has instantly aged with its use of language because of the way things have moved on socially in the last 10 years, which I'm not one of those people who looks back and is like, God, fuck that film because of this and this. You have to look back at it and go, that's what that's what language was. It's not on, shouldn't be used now, but move on from it, that sort of thing. So there is an element of that, a few sort of slurs and things like that in there which aren't as acceptable anymore. But the problem is they stand out loads now.
When you hear it again, you're like, shit, I forgot we used to use that word pretty liberally.
And it really, there's a particular gay slur in it that is used at least 3 times. And it's a bit like, oh, God, that's not okay. And it's only 14 years later. But things do happen, and at least it's better now. Do you know what I mean? I can't really say much more on that. And the other thing is that there's the odd bit for me, and I'm going to sound like an old man now, where it strays a little bit into the juvenile for me. You know what I've said before? I'm not a massive lover of fart jokes. So there's a couple in there I'm like, I just don't find it that funny. It's not offensive or anything like that. It just sort of don't have a reaction to it. It's but other than that, no.
How did you feel about the testicles on the drum kit?
That doesn't bother me because I just think that's really daft. Do you know what I mean? And the fact
I thought it was quite funny.
And what's more impressive is that's like a 10 grand prosthetic bollock. So it's like,
did he not just whip his own out?
Yeah. So someone in the prop department's been like, so what you're doing today is making a fake Will Ferrell bollock. Am I? Yeah. So I'm going to use it in the scene. Great. But how was your day at work? Well, let me tell you.
Let me tell you.
But no, nothing other than that really. What about you guys? I'll come to you first, Ron. Was there anything you particularly don't like about the film, or is it just a hit for you?
Yeah, I mean the language, definitely some of it is a bit of a clanger these days, and like I think obviously. And especially some parts of it is used by the characters you're not supposed to like, but then people do just emulate that in real life, no matter who's kind of saying it in a film. And I think if I had to nitpick, I think some of the sort of yes-anding in the the build-on scenes that we were talking about, like in the sleepwalking scene and stuff, like maybe goes a little bit too far. But that's
Clown has no penis.
It is very cool.
Oh, you Leonard Nimoy. But yeah, that's me answering this question because you've asked me it, not because
that's it. We always try and find, when we do the episodes without guests, we always try and give a balanced account of it. But sometimes, especially if you've been invited on and you've picked a film, there isn't anything you don't like about it, and that's fine. There are films that I would say the same thing about, but it's difficult, isn't it, to find stuff, especially when you've got an attachment to it. What about you, Laura? Is there anything you don't like or we'd change?
Really similar to you, I think, Josh, in that it maybe 2 to 3 times in the whole film strays into that sort of frat boy comedy that really doesn't appeal to me. Like being a teenager through that era of like American Pie and all that gross out sort of very male for male. I think they forgot that we were watching films as well as men for about 10 years. So like, I don't like the testicle bit. I just find it a bit like, oh, why? Like, I don't know, that bit. There's some bits, I think partially what Ron's saying with the yes-anding. I think it's after the fight on the lawn. And they, a trigger warning here for sexual content, but I honestly thought he was going to rape me.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a little bit into that machismo, I don't know how you say it.
It doesn't add anything, does it? It doesn't add anything to the film. It's just there because it's like, well, I can say this, so I'm going to say it.
Yeah, it's that one-upping a little bit. And so there's like maybe 2 or 3 moments that just slip into that where I go, oh, I've remembered you're not making this film for me. I just happen to like it, which was a sad byproduct of a lot of films of my teenage years.
No, yeah, same. There is definitely that element, and also things sometimes happen with these films of where certain elements of different types of people get hold of it, and you're like, oh, you didn't like this, because now I feel
yeah.
I can't like it. But like, it's like, I felt like that happened with Peaky Blinders. Like, I know that's a TV show, and I was like, I remember watching it being like, this is quite a subtle, interesting drama about post World War One, and then it got popular, and they went slow motion walking. That's it. It's just smoking, slow motion. And I was like, oh, where's the like PTSD stuff and like the low level working class stuff? But you know, they've got to make money at the end of the day, so these things happen. Okay, then, so we'll move on to talking about the critical reception then. So we'll have a little look at it and see if we can figure out if we think it is underrated. Alice, how do you think it did? It's a tough one to call, I think, this.
Well, I've got to hold my hands up and say I have seen a couple of the scores.
So you
right?
cheated. Yeah, that's fine.
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't cheat. I didn't do it on purpose, but I had to watch this one on Google Play, of all things. And when you buy something on Google Play, the Rotten Tomatoes score comes up. So I was like, fuck's sake, you just ruined the podcast. So I've seen that, so I'm not going to say anything.
You could have borrowed it off me. You could have done that thing where I go, I've got it on DVD, and you go, remember, I don't have a DVD player, it's 2022, and I go, oh yeah, and then...
Yeah, literally nothing, no disc drive in this house whatsoever.
See, I bought a spare disc drive so that when I'm traveling in winter, I can watch my Christmas films that are all on DVD.
Yeah, you see.
Very smart.
Always be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, okay, then let's ask you guys then. How do you think it did critically, or do you know?
I have no idea. I have no sense of that sort of thing. I'd imagine it probably got 2 stars in The Guardian and read like a 3. And it was fine for people that liked it, and people that didn't like it didn't watch it, because you don't watch something with Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly in if you don't like their sort of stuff. So that would be my guess, that it scores quite highly on viewer ratings, but comedy, like screwball comedy like that, never gets critical acclaim, because tragedy is the only thing that's hard to do, isn't it?
That's it. What about you, Rod? How do you sort of think it did?
Yeah, I reckon it's gonna be like maybe a low 40s on Rotten Tomatoes, if that. Like, I think it's gonna be, because I think, I think some of the stuff that we've said, like the more extreme bro comedy elements of it, I think the people that will rate stuff down for that will stick in their mind and affect the scores.
Okay. Let's have a look then. So, at the time of recording, so we do IMDb and then the 2 Rotten Tomatoes scores. That's how we do it. So, IMDb, it gets 6.9 out of 10. Then the audience on Rotten Tomatoes give it exactly the same. They give it 69%. And then...
Is this good? Sorry to interrupt.
It's okay. Well,
that's okay. It's bigger than 4. It's bigger than 4, which is what Ron thought it might be. So that's quite good, though.
And then the critics on Rotten Tomatoes give it 54%. So if you add those together and average them out, it gets 64%. That's what it gets. So quite middling. But I must say, I was really surprised at that. I thought it would be a bit more highly rated, particularly by the audience. So I'm gonna say underrated. What about you, Alice? 64%.
I think 64 is probably appropriately rated for me. I think, I think the critic score is a little bit harsh, and I think when you're giving it a score like that, you are ignoring some of the stronger performances and some of the stronger elements of the script. But I think to be in that sort of middle 6s, like, I think I would have sat with that audience score probably at the 69 or the 6.9 on IMDb. But I think sort of middle 6, I do think that's appropriate for what it is, personally.
Okay. What do you guys think? We'll come to you first, Laura. Is 64% underrated?
Yeah, I think it is, because I think for what it sets out to be, which is stupid, quotable, it's very good at that. And I think some of the choices that they've made are quite quirky, like the abs and the testicle being ridiculous. Like, they've made conscious choices with that. So, yeah, I think in terms of it achieving what it set out to achieve, I would have given it like high 70s into 80s, maybe.
Ooh, wow.
High praise indeed. What about you, Ron?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, if we're lining every film ever made up in a line, maybe 65% or 65% along the line isn't unfair. But I think you do need to rate things, through the lens that they were meant to be watched. And in that case, I think, in the 80s, 100%. There are better comedies like this, but it's pretty damn good.
Name them.
All right, if we're going underrated Will Ferrell movies, I think that The Other Guys is damn near flawless.
It is on my list.
Funny.
It is on.
Is that the one with the super problematic guy, though? Is that got Mark Wahlberg?
Yeah.
It does
Don't
have.
we sort of hate him a lot,
Yes.
though, for willfully beating people?
There's a section of the podcast for that, Laura. We say the bits we change. We change Mark Wahlberg. It's fine.
Right.
But no, I love The Other Guys. It's up there with my top comedies, and it's actually on my podcast list. So I will definitely.
Steve
cover it.
Coogan in that is
the bit where he
funny.
keeps offering them bribes and they keep going. It's amazing.
Jersey Boys or Mamma Mia.
But yeah, no, I would say I prefer The Other Guys to this, but I still back to the critical reception thing. I think for me this is underrated, and that's Alice has got no soul. She thinks it's horrible, so we'll say underrated.
No,
3.
The Other Guys, 3-1. That's absolutely fair. I totally
So
get
there you go, underrated. Thanks for coming on. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've had a great time. I've never felt more knowledgeable about films than I have for this hour. I love it when you just talk about one and I've seen it.
Well, so obviously you guys are from Lexx Education. Tell us a little bit more about it. Where can people find it? What's the general concept if the people don't know?
So you should be able to find it wherever you get your podcasts. Lexx Education is, I am trying to learn GCSE science from Ron. How's it going, Ron?
Yeah.
Trying being the optimal word, both verb and adjective.
Yeah, I'm not great at science or concentrating. And so we're doing our best, but Ron's not a teacher and I'm not a student. So it's if you like a mixture of arguments, science facts, and bad what are they called when you don't know the fact, so you make up a story for it?
Analogies.
Like hypothesis.
Analogy, that's the word, yeah. All I could think was allegory, and I was like, no, that's like a fable or something, isn't it? Analogy, yeah. If you like analogies for stuff, I kind of did an analogy then for analogy.
You could do an allegory, though, couldn't you? You could do it. What's Pythagoras' theorem? There's a mouse and a lion, and he's got a splinter in his paw. But no, so I've been, as I said to you before we started recording, I've been slowly working my way through it. I think I'm a couple in now, and I very much sit more in the Laura camp in terms of I'm listing stuff going, what is the point? Like it doesn't go in. Like when I did my science GCSE, I revised harder for science and math than I did for anything else, and I got worse marks, but I had to do it, just to get into college. So will you sit an exam at the end?
Yes, we're still working.
Right.
Well, the thing is, the end originally, when we first started doing this, we were like, we obviously, like you guys will know this from doing this podcast, you want your podcast to have longevity.
Yep.
There's loads of films. You can do this podcast indefinitely. So we sat down and we're like, well, when we get to the end of GCSE though, what will we do? And sort of brainstorming ideas. And then the more episodes we do, the more we realize we might just be doing this forever. Because especially with the physics, which is the stupidest of the three strands, there are episodes where we get through 1 to 2 lines of the curriculum. So yeah, the plan is to sit an exam. We don't quite know how we're going to format that it might end up being like a performance piece where we hire an exam hall and I sit in the middle and do the exam as people file through and watch.
like installation art.
I think
maybe we sell tickets and people can come and sit the exam alongside me.
I think that's a great idea. You could make a fringe show out of that. Do you know what I mean? Like people just doing the science GCSE. Or like you say, it's one of those things. If it goes 10 years time, I've got visions of you. Right, PhD. Physics. Yeah. But like you say, so available wherever you get podcasts. Do make sure to check that out. But so obviously, Laura, if people don't know you, you are a stand-up comedian. What else have you got going on? What else can people look out for?
You can look out for my other podcasts. So if science doesn't interest you, I also do one called the National Treasures podcast, which is me and my buddy Will Duggan go on nice days out and record our day out. And so it's kind of like going to a National Trust place, but you don't have to drive there or take a picnic or have a ticket. And I've written a couple of books, but this is a film podcast. So books,
Well, it's just films and that.
Well,
it could be and books and TV.
Yeah. Did we call it that so that we could throw any old shit in? Yes. So what? Tell us about the books then. Tell us about them. I think one of them some of our more local listeners will be particularly interested in.
Yeah, one of them is called Klopp, actually, and it is the diary of my fictional, I have to say for legal reasons, marriage to Jurgen Klopp, the Liverpool football manager, who I fell in love with for his sensible nature. And yes, Alice, yes.
We're big fans of Klopp in this house.
Yes. Well, I've written a diary of what it would be like to be married to somebody so sensible. So if you like silly, light laughs, that book is out and wonderful. And then I have written a novel called Pivot, which is about a woman who is lonely and bored and sad, and so turns to netball to see if it is the answer. So if you learn netball at school and then spent the rest of your life thinking, why the fuck did I have to learn that while the boys got to learn football, then that novel might be well up your street.
And available wherever you get your books.
Books, yeah.
Shops and the internet and that. Yeah. As they said then, we'll put links to all that stuff in the episode. We'll do some stuff on the social media as well when this comes out. Laura and Ron, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, there we go. Another guest episode done and another film in the underrated category. And I think rightly so, even though Alice has no sense of humour.
Oh, shots fired.
But no, obviously, thank you so much to Ron and Laura for coming on. Make sure you check out their stuff, Lexx Education. Look at Laura's stuff on the social medias. Look at her books, wherever you get your books and that.
Books
check
and
all
that.
the stuff.
Oh, new podcast idea.
Check all the stuff out. We'll put links to it. We'll post stuff when this comes out. But yeah, check it out. It's all good stuff, really. Well, Alice, it's your turn to pick next week.
It is indeed.
What? Go on. What's it gonna be?
I think I'm. You know what? This is one where I'm so super interested to see what you think of it. You may have seen it, you may not have seen it, but I reckon I'm going to get an interesting response from you. So the film that we are going to be watching for next week is Wicker Park.
Wicker Park.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'll say no more.
And as ever, we shall say no more. So, well, then join us next week when we're going to be talking about Wicker Park. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. But on all the social medias, search for just Films and That and you'll find us. We're also on the television, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. Every Friday from 6 p.m, you can find me and Josh talking about our favourite underrated and underseen films on the local TV network. So if you live in Bristol, Birmingham, Leeds, Liverpool or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. Or if you have Sky and you live anywhere in the UK, you can find us on Channel 188. That is every Friday from 6 p.m. on the local TV network.
Yes, there we go. Lots of ways to hear us and see us, aren't you lucky? And as ever, thank you very much for listening. We do always appreciate your support. Until next week, it's goodbye from me. Cheerio!
Bye!